Okay, so today we're talking about the Navigator Pro Cleat Kit replacement. So you might find that your trim line isn't holding super well. Maybe the teeth on the cleat are a little bit worn. Yeah, you might have seen some damage perhaps to this plastic part. It's probably a good idea to replace it. You can get your parts from your local dealer or off northkb.com. So we've got our spare part here. This comes with the screws already in the cleat. We've got some multi-grips, we've got a push pin, we've got an Allen key 2.5 and a 3mm, and we've got this handy little jig, which isn't completely necessary, it just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, so for a start, we're just going to hold on to the landing line, pull that all the way out until we get to the bottom of the front flying line. You can push those together and they come apart. Keep on pulling on the landing line until you get the end out, and that will just slide off. We'll pop that to the side. Okay, so now we'll just grab our handy little jig for holding that, and we're going to push down. This one's 3mm. You could use anything. You could use, you know, like a center punch or anything. It just wants to be smaller than 4mm or 1/4 inch. So push straight down. I go on both sides until that pops right out. Okay, so I'm going to put that aside also. And now your QR just pulls apart. We'll put the QR over there also. So just get your 2.5mm Allen key. We're going to undo the grub screw inside this little cleat ball first. You don't have to undo it the whole way, but undo it until that ball's free to slide up the trim line. Get that out of the way, and then I just twist the trim line a bit and push it until I can gain access to this figure 8 knot inside the trim handle. Give that a bit of a wiggle. This might be quite tight, but you can push on that bottom loop and it all frees up pretty quick. Okay, I'm going to slide that trim handle off, and this ball can be a little bit hard to get over that bungee, but just give it a good pull. And now we're going to thread the trim line out from the cleat. And at this stage I like to just keep the power bracket in that same orientation. Just note that the trim line's coming up from the bottom and we've got the red ball on the left. Okay, so to reduce a bit of tension here, we can take the end of the depower main line off. So you could either put a flying line or some sort of line on there so it doesn't pull all the way through, or I just put a tool through here and give the top a bit of a pull to make sure we're not going to lose the end there. So this connection can be quite tight, but you can just kind of work the ends apart. So you just pull the trim line all the way out and off, pop that over there. Okay, so at this stage I think we can just pull that front flying line out of the assembly and just push the landing line tubing, and so it comes out the end, and then you can just use another tool just to slide inside there and pop this PU insert out. Another thing to note here is that the larger hole side of it was facing outwards, so we'll just remember to put that back in the same way again. So that can now pull through there, likewise for the depower main line. So that's our old worn one. We're going to get a new one, and at this stage just noting that the bigger hole is on the bottom, and that's for the landing line tube. That's going to be a little bit flared out, so we have to give it a bit of a twist to get it in there. So this tubing can be a little bit tight to push through, so you could put a little bit of water on there and it'll help it slide through. But once we get it out the top, we have this little jig also that we'll make available, and we can share a link down below in the video. Now I'm going to grab this little PU insert, and noting this is the wider side, this side is a little bit narrower, so we want it to face outwards. So I'm going to pop that down on my little jig, and then push this right on, and that helps put the PU insert in the inside nice and flush, and it's like 0.5 of a millimeter inside the end of the tubing. Okay, so another option if you don't have the jig is to use some needle nose pliers. So pick up the little PU insert, and you'll notice that one side has the larger hole. That one faces outwards from the tubing, and so we're going to put that onto the end of the needle nose pliers, just like that, with the large hole upwards, and then push the whole lot into the tube, give it a wiggle, make sure it's firmly seated in there. We want it to sit just 0.5 of a mil inside the end of the tubing. And then pull it back down into place. Give it a bit of a yank, make sure that's holding in there. That stops the tubing from pulling through. So if this is a bit twisted, you can just twist the tubing, and that helps it sit a bit cleaner. Right, so this stage it's good to just grab a line, feed that through the two ends of the D-power main line. Just helps you thread everything back through the cleat base. Get those nice and straight. Pull that through. Okay, so we've got all of that together. Well, we've got those lines through there. I think it's probably easiest to get your trim line and put those lines through the end. And then we're going to feed the end of the trim line through those two loops. With that mark cloth on there, but you can sort of give it a good pull and work each one of those over. Okay, so you just want to make sure this is all nice and tight here, and I just loop that bit around so it's away from the landing line, so nothing's going to get caught there. Okay, so at this stage we'll just keep on working at this end. So remembering that we were coming up through the bottom of the power bracket with the red ball on the left, and then we're going to thread through the cleat. And we can grab onto the cleat ball. I just double over that mark cloth. Helps to push it through. Slide this up. Now it can be a little bit tight to pull that ball over the bungee. Just give that a good pull, and then thread the end of the trim line through the trim handle. Pull that up out of the way. So now we just want to tie a figure 8 in the end of the trim line. Give that a bit of a pull. You want the bungee to come out one end, and you want the other end of the figure 8. You want the end of that mark cloth to just line up at the end. And I like to tuck the tail of the mark cloth through the knot as well. It just keeps it all tidy. And then once that figure 8 is nice and tight, you can pull that whole lot into the trim handle. And now it's time to pull the ball back down. And it's good to have about a centimetre to 15 mil gap between the top of the trim handle and the ball. And you want the ball just sitting down on the top of that bungee. I get my 2.5 mil Allen key. Now you want to do it firmly, but not excessively tight, because remember, you're just winding into a plastic thread, so you don't want to strip that. Just do it firm. So that's not going to go anywhere. Okay. So you can use a flying line or another line to push this through, but while the coating's still nice and stiff, I can thread that front line down through the landing line channel. Okay, so I like to put a tool through the end of the depower main line, and I just give that a bit of a pull to create some excess line out the end, and then just work that around with my thumb. So I just use my thumbs to kind of smooth that around, and you want it to be flush with the sides of the plastic. So now we're just gonna push that front line through, and we can feed that through the QR body out the bottom. Then you'll notice on top of the shaft there's these little grooves here on the side. Now we're going to want to line those grooves up with the holes in the spinning handle, and that's what the knurled pin is going to go through to hold it all together. Okay, so we have a little key on the side of the top spinning handle, and that indexes with another slot on the bottom spinning handle to go together. So I'm just going to grab that jig again, and I like to push it together, and I just spin the bottom of that shaft until I can see the holes are clear, and then push it all together. I'll grab the knurled pin. You put it in on the side that has the slot on the bottom spinning handle, and I just rotate that shaft until I can feel it's in the right place, and then I can take it out, get the multi-grips on about the right size, give that a squeeze together. So you want this to be flush with the sides of the spinning handle on both sides. So now all we've got to do is fasten the bottom of our landing line to the flying line. So open up the loop at the end of the flying line, thread through. So this is quite an important part to make sure that this loop-to-loop connection, there's no twists in there or anything. Once you're happy with it, pull that nice and tight together, and then go to the top of the depower, top of the power bracket, and just pull that left side until it's all pulled through. And then you're back in action, ready to go. Wind your lines up and get out there.